Testing. All right. Let me grab the lights real quick and come up there and join you guys. I don't know if you could tell there at the end. For those of you at home, you probably had a little better view than we did. It's a little dark. I'm going to have to fix that pretty soon. But if you couldn't tell there at the end, they were having the Shabbat dinner. And, everybody was with their friends and family, and then Matthew was with his apparently new pet friend dog. But you couldn't really see it in the video in here. Yeah, it was a perfectly black dog, and we have a perfectly black screen to view it on. Yeah. Well, and it went from like 99% gray for the road to 100% black for the dog. So as we have been, I have some questions. I didn't have as many because we don't have as long. I split the other episode because it was 56 minutes, and I wanted to hear what you guys thought more than 3 minutes worth. But I didn't feel like there was quite enough for us to split this one into two sections. Like we have done in the past, the people who are online are going to do the Peter questions on the sheet. And we're going to look at the rest, and we'll get as far as we get. Essentially, I want us to use these questions, but I also, maybe more than that, want to hear what you guys thought of the story, or things that you noticed, or things that you'd like to point out as particularly meaningful, or something that you wanted to kind of dive into a little bit, even before these questions. And I hate to be all third grade, but raise your hand so I can throw the microphone at you. It's on, so you should be good.
I've had the privilege of having it chosen streamed to me by an anonymous donor. So I watched it already. I wasn't for sure what the significance of Matthew and his relationship with his father. There's nothing in scriptures. So it's like, what we talked several times about, it's poetic license. And I'm not sure exactly if I understood that. Maybe you could all explain to me what the deal was with Matthew and this, finding the merchants, or is it the Jews fishing on the Sabbath? And that's my...
Yes, exactly. And that's a great question. I heard two different questions there. I don't know if anybody in here wants to elaborate on their thoughts on it.
I have a wild guess. I'm like, if the tax collectors weren't very popular, so maybe his father is concerned, like, hey, I didn't really want you to be a tax collector, because I think in that era it was much more common, like you had some discretion. Like it seems like it's kind of up to him about who he's getting to take advantage of. So I imagine he'd be unpopular. So maybe, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't see the first episode, and maybe they'll go into it more later, because he got right up to the door and then stopped, right? So yeah, maybe the next episode they're like, okay, and then he comes in, and or maybe he doesn't ever go in. He got right up to the door, and then maybe he'll decide not to. But anyway, that was my take, was maybe because tax collectors aren't popular people.
Yeah, and specifically what I was thinking is that, there's even this underlying idea that, tax collectors aren't really Jews. That they've sold their people out. And yes, that they're traitors to their people. And if you're his father, you might even take that more personally. I can only speak from my own experience. I was raised by my grandmother for 8 years or so, and she disowned me whenever I moved out. And that's something fairly common in the South. You know, that's not something, I mean, it doesn't happen to like half of the children, but there are a lot of circumstances where that's a pretty typical response to, we don't approve of your behavior, you're not a part of our family. And I imagine that's you know, been a thing that they've seen. Are you joining us, or are you just checking on us? Okay. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if that's kind of where they wanted us to go. I agree with you; it's not in Scripture, but I would also say that it's probably pretty close to accurate. And I do think they brought it up for the exact reason you were saying. It seems like this episode is all about family and Shabbat and community, and part of that community that they're asking about is, well, what about Matthew's community? And so they're leading us in that direction. Poetic license, of course, but that's sort of the question they're answering.
In the show, Matthew said, my father said he doesn't have a son.
Yes, exactly.
So he has been disowned. You know, in this show, he has been disowned.
Yes, exactly. And that seems to be the case in the sense of the show. And I don't think that's inaccurate.
No, we don't.
But of course, we don't. Yeah. And that is one of the things that I brought up here in the questions. And we're jumping in the middle because that's what we do. It's like a good swimming pool. You've got to jump in the middle. How do you think Matthew felt about his Shabbat? Given everything we've just talked about, you know, what did you think about, like, if you were him, what were they leading us into a little bit?
He wanted to be there. He wanted to celebrate Shabbat.
Yeah, that he wanted to be with his family. I guess we're not actually told. It's just kind of led to us that he goes up to his family's home and he looks in and he sees his family, and rather than engage or whatever, he just walks away. And I do think there's probably a lot of poetic license with the dog, because dogs for the Jewish people were not, they were not kosher, like literally, they were unclean. Which something we talked about in class the other day is that a lot of the non-Jewish people did not consider dogs unclean. The Syrophoenician woman, in fact, in their culture, they had pet dogs. And so the only time in Scripture that the word is used, Jesus used it. He says to her, you know, what, you don't give the food to the dogs, you give it to your children. Well, the word dogs there actually is more like puppies, because they would have kept dogs as pets, and so they would have seen them as a little more endearing than the average, Jewish person. So I don't really see Matthew feeding, like enjoying Shabbat dinner with this rando stray dog. But to Debbie's point here, she texted in, he felt alone since Shabbat is family. Like that's what this is about, right? Like that's what Shabbat is about. It's about family, and essentially, he has no family. Yes. Hold on one second. Come on, everybody. There are several people online who are
I
involved.
wonder if we're supposed to think about the black dog like we think about a black cat. Not we in general think about a black cat, but what the traditional black cats are evil idea. Maybe black animal supposed to lead us to.
I'm not aware of that. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But I know that dogs in general were very negative to the Jewish culture.
That would kind of go along with.
Exactly. That it was like pigs are unclean, and obviously they got a lot of hate because they were food sources for non-Jewish people. But pigs, they're not really going to live in your city. But dogs will. Like stray dogs will totally just come into the city and eat out of the trash. And you have to deal with dogs. You have to deal with the worst side of dogs, because you don't get them as pets. You just get them as nuisances. It's like raccoons, I guess. It's like rats. Yeah, exactly. It's like rats.
So I have a question. I want to take a little different direction. Looking ahead, you had the question about the Nicodemus when Mary told him it wasn't anything you did, right? The interaction where Nicodemus sort of ran and was like, no, let me go investigate the miracle ahead of time. Why was that? Like, was that because he was afraid of being found out or something, or was he worried that Mary was going to say something that would get them both into trouble, or like that felt complicated.
You're right.
I didn't understand why.
Yeah, you're right. That felt kind of weird. That it did. It felt weird to me, and I agree with you. I am interested in your thoughts on it as well. I mean, I have thoughts, but I'd love your thoughts as well. I guess my thought with it is that he's already made a truth claim about Mary, that this can't happen except through God. And at the time we said that he made that claim to kind of absolve himself of responsibility, but he knows that, I guess subconsciously or maybe consciously, he knows he didn't do it. So if it happened and he claimed it was through God, what does that mean about him if he didn't do it? So I don't know what's happening with this, but this wasn't me, I don't think, and I don't know that I want anybody to figure this out until I get a view of it myself.
I think he was disappointed when he found out that he didn't have anything to do with it. When he actually talked to her, he thought because he had tried and he had done what he knew to do, and then how else would she have gotten okay?
Yeah.
And so to think that and then find out it wasn't you is a little bit disappointing.
There's a thing, I have a thing against television shows, in that I think that most of the time television shows really flatten people, especially in like 30-minute shows. They have like one direction, and they do weird things that don't make any sense in reality. In this episode, I'm kind of with you on this, I thought this progression with Nicodemus was one of the most fascinating things I've seen for a while in television. Because, and correct me, and I'd love your thoughts too, but when he heard, like the first moment he heard from the guy, whatever his name was, it felt like he was basically not ashamed, but very hesitant about the idea that he was responsible. And then, very, very quickly, he became very, very not hesitant. To the point that, like you're saying, when he goes to her, he's almost assumed he's done it. And then she says, and I have the line in there, she says it wasn't anything you did, and you can almost see and feel sort of the deflated. But then, and this is what I loved, then there's this moment at the end where he does seem like he's genuinely happy that somebody helped you. And that seemed very human to me. That whole interaction seemed like something I could see me doing. Because I can see everybody I know, but me especially, like falling prey to, I'm the one who did it and I'm responsible and how great am I, to, oh, it's not me, I feel terrible, to finally the realization that, well, who cares who it was? Like, you're better. That's what matters here. And, I don't know where Nicodemus is going. I don't know what kind of story they're going to tell with him, because we're not given much in Scripture, which is something you've mentioned. But I'm interested to see where they take his story, because he developed quite a lot in this episode, to me.
Nicodemus, I think his character is, they're preempting Nicodemus's desire and what he did at Jesus' crucifixion. You can see this with his wife, and the accolade and all the things that they've come up with Shabbat, which he said they're getting away from worshiping God. you know, and his wife is sort of, she's loving, but she's muddying the waters, isn't she? And that's what I think anyway.
Mm. Yeah, I think you got that exactly right.
Nicodemus' wife wants to keep him on the straight and narrow, pharisaical, acceptable. You are a teacher of the law, don't muddy the waters, and you're supposed to know you can't say you don't know something, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed, to go along with kind of your point here, is it seems like there is both the political role and the religious role to Nicodemus, in that you can't question, you have to remain. I mean, we see this. I'm not making a political point here, but like politicians can't do anything wrong. You know, if you catch a politician running a red light and you get a video of it, his campaign is ruined. You know, like there's that idea of like we see with athletes and we see with anybody in the public eye. And it seems like that's kind of what they're going with Nicodemus. Who knows if it's true? But he's basically of the opinion of like, I'm just trying to do the best I can do. And sometimes that leads me to asking questions. And sometimes that leads me to wondering. And sometimes that leads me to trying to hide things because I don't know about them yet. Let me read real quick what's come through online. Yeah, now Len brings up the point. He says, Nicodemus seems to be shocked that some non-religious man healed Mary. To him, that was up to the religious elite, especially someone as deep as he was in understanding Scripture. And I don't know if you guys noticed, because it was really small in here, but in the video he's reading, I can't remember the title, but the pages that he was reading when Guy comes in were about exorcism. And so essentially it seems like he's trying to learn how to do exorcisms, and then finds out that some random guy that's not a religious teacher, he's not trained, he's not a Pharisee, and that was what he was questioning about. Like, was he a Pharisee? Is someone, you know, I want to find out who he is because obviously I need to learn from him, even though I'm the teacher of Israel, so to speak. Debbie, I'm really glad she brought this up too. Is that, you know, the idea of Shabbat seemed really important in this episode, like this whole idea of rest, which I would like to get into, but I don't know if we're going to have time. She says, I thought it was interesting the different Shabbats being held from Nicodemus to Mary's Shabbats. Very different from Nicodemus's table with all the adornments to the poor, to Mary. Jesus in true form picks Mary's Shabbat, those that have the least, but the heart. And I love that point. I love what you brought up here. In fact, that was something I loved about the sort of the orchestration of that last scene, is this idea that when Jesus decides whose Shabbat to go to, he chooses the people with no family. Say that again? Yeah, Matthew got the dog, so he got the best end of this deal, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I think, Debbie brings up a great point, that essentially Jesus chose the poorest person's Shabbat to go to. And, of course, we know the story. We've read John. We know that, I can't think of his name. I've never been able to think of his name. I put it in here as Bartholomew, because it's Bartholomew, right? Isn't it Bartholomew who says they weren't? They were calling him. Yeah, they call Lilith, they called Mary Lilith forever. So I think they're trying to obfuscate identities a little bit. They're doing a terrible job with James, because they could have called him Jacob and nobody would have known who he was. But he was the one who said, nothing good ever comes out of Nazareth. That was Nathaniel. That's who it is. Yes. But we've got an apostle. We have Mary. We've got James. Exactly. Except for Mary, I guess. But actually, you say that, but James, at least, he had said that they're my students. But yeah, nothing's happened. But these are the people who never get invited. They never get, they never go. They're never around the table with Nicodemus, and they're the ones that Jesus goes to be with. And I guess in my mind, that's exactly what the church is. That's who the church is. We're the people who aren't looking, to your point, 2 weeks ago, Jesus isn't looking for pet projects. He's looking for people. You know, he loves people. He wants to be with people. And those people will be better because Jesus is there, but he's not looking for, you know, people to fix, so to speak. And then Lynn mentions that, you know, Peter was a professional fisherman, so perhaps he was seeing business opportunity. Perhaps, this is with, why do you think Peter spent money, I guess? Peter was a professional fisherman, so perhaps he was seeking business opportunity, or perhaps his business was slow and he was seeking a path to find income. He might also be hiding what trouble he's in from his wife, maybe a pride problem. Peter was a pretty strong personality and brash on occasion, as if he always has a better way than other people. And especially with that last one, you know, why do you think Peter isn't telling Eden his plans? You know, he has a better way. He has a better answer. He's right. Nobody else is, you know, see. No, go ahead. I think both of them are. Well, not now, but like before. I think the way that the story is told is it's Andrew's debt, but it's their business. So if Andrew goes under, he goes under too. Yeah. And so he's doing this thing with the whole merchants, selling out the merchants as a way to not the Kevin merchants, the merchants in the show. And you wonder how this is gonna turn out. We don't know. As far as I know, we don't know anything about that part of it. Yeah. I'll finish with this because sadly we're out of time. Then there's a lot more to discuss in this episode, obviously, that we could discuss. I'm going to leave you the papers, and if you're online and you want the papers, I have the papers. Text me and I'll just send them to you. And if you're online and you want the paper for next week, text me and I can just send them out before we get started. I'm not going to send them to you a week beforehand because I don't want you to write a 6-page term paper on it. I want us to enjoy the show for the show's sake first. Let's see. I had a concluding thought. Now it's gone. Yes, it concluded itself before it ever got to me. It's about rest, and it has nothing to do with the episode, except for the sort of the foundational level of the episode. There's this underlying idea that the Sabbath, the Shabbat, is a day that you spend with family. It's a day that you spend together. It's a day that you don't work. And I got the impression through the episode as well that it's a day that you also you don't mind holding other people accountable to the fact that we are together. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like a lot of times if we were going to have a dinner and somebody couldn't make it, I would have liked to have seen them, but no big deal. But it seems like in the episode, at least, it was very much like, no, this is Shabbat. You don't work today. This is what we're supposed to be doing. This is not okay. And I like the idea of that. I don't know that I don't really take a particular day off, so to speak. I've been doing a better job with that recently. But I know that that's something that a lot of us struggle with, is actually taking time off. Be with our families and have a meal together, have that time out. And not just with our families, but it was just on the show with our friends, with people that maybe you don't know as well, to get to know those people. And I thought that maybe that was something that, more than some of these other details, is something I think a lot of us could learn from as well. Do you guys have concluding thoughts or last things that you wanted to mention before we wrap up? I'm going to give that to you.
With our study on Tuesday mornings, which we finished, somebody made the statement or observation that, she liked the way that women's roles were more significant than we thought they were in those days. And this is coming across too. You know, there is a lot of women involvement. There's not Matthew.
Mary.
No, not Mary. The wife of.
Oh yeah, I can't think of her name. Do we know her name?
Oh, Eden. Eden of.
Oh, Peter's wife is
Yes,
Eden. Yes, but I
yes.
don't know Nicodemus' wife, but she's also in the
Yeah,
same.
and then there's. I lost my thought too, but I thought that impressed me. The comment that I think it was Kim Mills. I may be wrong. Who said, you know, the significance of the woman's role, us being women, you know, that was uplifting to her.
One thing that I'll mention too, and we discussed this maybe 2 months ago. I teach a class, or I taught a class, it's over now, at Arrow, and we've been looking at Jesus' life and sort of the historical significance, like historically who was he? Historically, what's his background? And when it comes to that kind of thing, one of the things we talked about is that the second classhood, right, or whatever, of women is a Greek thing. It's not a Jewish thing. That the Jewish people got it as they were Hellenized, so to speak, as Greek culture mixed in with Jewish culture, they became more patriarchal, so to speak. But you know, that wasn't sort of the way they were historically. Historically, you had a lot of women prophets and etc. And you don't have that when it comes to New Testament culture as they were being Hellenized. And we're being invaded. Speaking of the Greeks, and so I'm going to let us go. And great to see you guys. And I think next week we're going to watch all of the next episode, because I think the next week's episode is not 56 minutes long. And then we will catch up then. Thank you guys. And thank you guys online as well. I'm going to go back there and turn that off too.